Saint Pius X was Ricini. Born Giuseppe Melchiorre Sarto, he is known for vigorously opposing modernist interpretations of Catholic doctrine and for promoting liturgical reforms and scholastic theology. He initiated the preparation of the 1917 Code of Canon Law, the first comprehensive and systemic work of its kind. The Society of St. Pius X, a traditionalist Catholic fraternity, is named after him. He advanced the liturgical movement by formulating the principle of active participation of the faithful. He encouraged Holy Communion, and he lowered the age for First Communion. Like previous popes, he promoted Thomism as the principal philosophical method to be taught in Catholic institutions. He vehemently opposed various 19th century philosophies that he viewed as an intrusion of secular errors incompatible with Catholic dogma. Pius X was known for his firm demeanor and sense of personal poverty, reflected by his membership of the Third Order of St. Francis. He regularly gave sermons from the pulpit. He rejected any kind of favors for his family, and his close relatives chose to remain in poverty, living near Rome. He also undertook a reform of the Roman Curia in 1908. On his deathbed he stated, "Now I begin to think the end is approaching. The Almighty in his inexhaustible goodness wishes to spare me the horrors which Europe is undergoing." He was beatified in 1951 and canonized in 1954 by Pope Pius XII. Benedict XV was Genoese. Born Giacomo Paolo Giovanni Battista della Chiesa, his pontificate was largely overshadowed by World War I and its political, social, and humanitarian consequences in Europe. In 1914, the College of Cardinals chose della Chiesa at the relatively young age of 59 at the outbreak of World War I, which he labeled the suicide of civilized Europe. The war and its consequences were the main focus of Benedict XV. He immediately declared the neutrality of the Holy See and attempted from that perspective to mediate peace in 1916 and 1917. Both sides rejected his initiatives. German Protestants rejected any papal peace as insulting. The French politician Georges Clemenceau regarded the Vatican initiative as being anti-French. Having failed with diplomatic initiatives, Benedict XV focused on humanitarian efforts to lessen the impacts of the war. After the war, he repaired the difficult relations with France, which re-established relations with the Vatican in 1921. During his pontificate, relations with Italy improved as well, as Benedict XV now permitted Catholic politicians led by Don Luigi Sturzo to participate in national Italian politics. He would die in such agony that he fell into delirium and later a coma whilst he battled pneumonia. His body then lay in state for the people to see before being moved for burial in the Vatican grottos. Pius XI was Deciani. Born Ambrogio Damiano Achille Ratti, he was the first sovereign of Vatican City from its creation as an independent state on the 11th of February 1929. Pius XI issued numerous encyclicals, including Quadragesimo Anno on the 40th anniversary of Pope Leo XIII's groundbreaking social encyclical Rerum Novarum, highlighting the capitalistic greed of international finance, the dangers of socialism, communism, and justice on social issues, and Quas Primus, which established the Feast of Christ the King in response to anti-clericalism. The encyclical Studiorum Ducem, promulgated the 29th of June 1923, was written on the occasion of the 6th centenary of the canonization of Thomas Aquinas, whose thought is acclaimed as central to Catholic philosophy and theology. The encyclical also singles out the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas, Angelicum, as the preeminent institution for the teaching of Aquinas. Pius XI died on the 10th of February 1939 in the Apostolic Palace and is buried in the Papal Grotto of St. Peter's Basilica. In the course of excavating space for his tomb, 2 levels of burial grounds were uncovered, which revealed bones now venerated as the bones of St. Peter. Pius XII was Italian. Born Eugenio Maria Giuseppe Giovanni Pacelli, he would serve as secretary of the Department of Extraordinary Ecclesiastical Affairs, Papal Nuncio to Germany, and Cardinal Secretary of State, in which capacity he worked to conclude treaties with European and Latin American nations. During his papacy, the Catholic Church issued the decree against communism, declaring that Catholics who profess communist doctrine are to be excommunicated as apostates from the Christian faith. The Church experienced severe persecution and mass deportations of Catholic clergy in the Eastern Bloc. His 41 encyclicals include Mysticae Corporis on the Church as the body of Christ, Mediator Dei on liturgy reform, and Humani Generis, in which he instructed theologians to adhere to episcopal teaching and allowed that the human body might have evolved from earlier forms. He eliminated the Italian majority in the College of Cardinals in 1946. Much like Pope Pius IX, Pius XII's candidacy for beatification has been continually halted due to accusations of anti-Semitism by Christ-hating Zionists and their anti-Catholic supporters in the English-speaking world who wish to control the decision-making of the Vatican. As of today, he is currently given the title of Venerable. St. John XXIII was Italian, born Angelo Giuseppe Roncalli. He was ordained a priest in 1904 and served as nuncio in France and a delegate to Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey. His papal predecessor appointed him cardinal priest of Santa Prisca, as well as the Patriarch of Venice. He was unexpectedly elected pope at age 76 after 11 ballots. He would betray expectations of being a conservative pope by, instead, called for a Second Vatican Council. His policies of removing almost all temporal authority from the Church and his attempt to modernize it would mark the beginning of many problems for the faithful. By increasing the numbers of cardinals, he would dilute its authority, much in the same way that Augustus Caesar had done to the Roman Senate, thus ensuring his and his faction's policies outlined in the Second Vatican Council could be unopposed. We see this being expressed by the excessive amounts of beatifications to justify the actions of many popes and their supporters post-Vatican II. Pope Francis would do this very thing by bypassing the requirements for sainthood and make John a saint in 2014. An open supporter of Zionism, he would kowtow to its most radical supporters with the explanation that he supported Talmudic immigration to Palestine as a humanitarian issue. Though at the same time he ignored the fact that the very same people he supported would openly discriminate against the native Christians and Muslims already living there. This would cause the long-running trend of modern popes often ignoring adherent Catholics, whom they take for granted, and openly embracing non-Christians, whom they wish to garner favor from. St. Paul VI was Italian. Born Giovanni Battista Enrico Antonio Maria Montini, he continued the Second Vatican Council, which he closed in 1965, implementing its numerous reforms, the most prominent of which was pushing Mariology in a maximalist form. He would start the trend of a traveling pope. He would be made saint by Pope Francis in 2018. He was like many other post-World War II popes, and that he wished to de-Europeanize the Church by ignoring the poor in North America and Europe, in favor of the poor in the Third World, demanding that the wealthy of the First World to pay for them. This once again echoes his predecessor's policy of embracing the alien and ignoring the plight of the familiar. Paul would be accused of homosexuality on several occasions, where he is said to have been in relationships with several men. He would openly deny these charges during his life, but after his death we see that in 1994, a former Vatican honor chamberlain, Franco Bellegrandi, would allege that Paul had been blackmailed into promoting other gay men into positions of power within the Vatican. This appears to have been confirmed as true, as in 2006, the newspaper L'Espresso reported that the private papers of Police Commander General Giorgio Manes accepted the blackmail story as true, and that they claimed Italian Prime Minister Aldo Moro had been asked to help. Aldo Moro would also be killed by the far-left terrorist group called the Red Brigades, whom the Italian government had accused the Pope of treating them too kindly, thus suggesting of possible conspiracy. John Paul I was Italian. His reign is among the shortest in papal history, resulting in the most recent year of 3 popes and the first to occur since 1605. John Paul I remains the most recent Italian-born pope, the last in a succession of such popes that started with Clement VII in 1523. During his time as Patriarch of Venice, he would exemplify the self-flagellating nature of European self-loathing. When he promoted the idea that Muslims should begin building mosques in Venice and Rome and spread their faith, ignoring the fact that it would be at a detriment of the local Catholic Italians, as well as all previous Christians that had fought and died during the various crusades, jihads, and raids to protect their homes from Islamic piracy. In essence, he was spitting on the graves and memories of Pope St. Agatho, St. Benedict II, Gregory IV, St. Leo IV, and John VIII, who defended Rome from Islamic sackings and expansion into the Italian mainland. He was the first pontiff to have a double name, choosing John Paul in honor of his two immediate predecessors, John the 23rd and Paul VI. He was declared a servant of God by his successor, John Paul II, in 2003, with Pope Francis naming him Venerable in 2017. St. John Paul II was Polish. Born Karol Józef Wojtyla, he adopted the name of his predecessor in tribute to him. Born in Poland, John Paul II was the first non-Italian pope since Adrian VI in the 16th century, and the second longest-serving pope after Pius IX in modern history. He can be criticized as being naive and blinded by the concept of religious universalism, which proved to be more harmful to the Catholic faith than helpful. Additionally, he was criticized by both pro- and anti-reformers of the Second Vatican Council for his generally conservative interpretation of it. He would travel to 129 countries. He beatified 1,344 people and canonized 483, with critics stating that he diluted sainthood with the number of appointments. He would order the publication of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. His apologies would see him kowtowing to groups drawn from anti-Catholic and anti-European sentiments. This self-flagellations for perceived crimes of the past by long-dead Catholics, prominent and obscure, would further weaken trust between the faithful and the Church. This trust would further weaken at the start of the 21st century with various sex scandals that afflicted the Church, which may have possibly been further aggravated by Pope Paul VI's appointments. After his death, a cult of popularity would surround him, which would soon after cause him to be canonized a saint by Pope Francis in 2014.